I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfilment. When performance stops feeling worth it, a conversation that leaders rarely admit they're having. Now, this doesn't mean when I say performance doesn't feel worth it anymore, that you're burnt out, that you don't have the ability. It's about questioning whether this version of success still justifies the effort and the energy that you have to put in. And this is a sort of question that I hear regularly from established leaders. Most of us go through a journey when we're younger or slightly inexperienced. It's head down, dig, attack, move forward, develop. We're trying to get into those senior leadership positions. And then once we've been in those positions, the mindset shifts to proving what you can do, making a difference, contributing to the people that you are leading and the organization that you're leading. And then this final phase is often something that creeps up, that starts to gnaw and to niggle. And it's not an admission of weakness, but what you must not do is ignore that gut feel, that question that some of you will relate to as you're listening to this. Is it still worth it? Is what this role takes out of me still worth it? You must address that question. And it's a major focus of mine when I'm working one-to-one with senior leaders. I've experienced it myself. When I worked as a CEO in professional sport, it's an all-consuming role. It takes up your time, your energy, your bandwidth. There's no 9 to 5. The match day of a sports club is, of course, on a weekend, so that is a working day, and the demands never really stop. Now, for many, many years, moving into decades, I absolutely loved that experience. But there came a point when that question started to raise its head, and I suppressed it and I pushed it away. So what I want to talk about today is how not to deal with that question and some of the coping mechanisms I see leaders utilize, and indeed how I believe you very much should deal with that question in a healthy way to allow you to move forward with clarity and confidence. My work as a coach is a privilege. That's how I view it, because you get to build really strong connections with clients and a level of trust and a level of openness that allows real candor and allows some fabulous momentum to be created and some growth and development as a consequence of that candor. And often those conversations give me themes and reasons why I want to shine a spotlight on those themes through the Lonely Leader podcast. And this is very much in that vein, because I see this question bubbling up more and more with what leaders are having to deal with. And that's why I don't want it to be something that you suppress. I want it to be something that you draw forward. And I know I stressed at the beginning of the episode, this isn't weakness. Where does this come? It's not leaders that when you look at them, you would say, oh, they're close to physical or mental burnout. It's those leaders that just keep moving forward. They absorb pressure without complaint. They carry responsibilities that many people don't even know in their own organizations that they're carrying. They are the emotional depository for their staff, for their wider stakeholder. They make decision after decision and continue to find the ability to move forward. But ultimately, leadership at the highest level always comes with a quiet tax. And these traits that leaders demonstrate, fundamentally, they do have a tax. We all get to a point where we start to experience decision-making fatigue. We all get to a point where trying to do right by our staff and stakeholders and be that emotional depository starts to be draining. We all get to a point where that constant visibility and scrutiny of our decisions starts to have a draining impact. So again, I keep using this point because it's easy for people to say, well, it's burnout. It's not burnout, because you can keep moving forward with this question of, is it still worth it, for many, many years. and it won't necessarily compromise you in a physical sense the way that burnout will. But what it will do is erode your sense of fulfillment. You're no longer deriving the level of fulfillment from your work that you used to, and it becomes more of a, well, I'm just on autopilot. This pays the bills. It's what I do. It's what I know. This is just how it is. And that is fundamentally wrong. Now, as with all these episodes, maybe this isn't directly relevant to you, but there will be a section of our community that are curious here, that are nodding, and they hear me say it's fundamentally wrong to ignore this question if you're starting to ask, is it worth it still? And for those of you that feel some resonance to this, I'm going to share 3 core, what would I call them, avoidance strategies of how people suppress the need to answer this question and keep moving forward. So the first avoidance strategy is doubling down, working harder, just punching through. And I admit this was often my default setting. Well, I haven't got time to be thinking like this. There's too much to be done. There's always another email, another call, another meeting. So you just try and push yourself through, drive yourself even harder, raise your own personal standards, and this question will go away. That's one coping mechanism which may resonate. The other one is just distraction, numbing, you could say, that you just saturate yourself with a never-ending calendar of meetings and things that require your attention, and there just isn't space to think. It's a dotted line back to doubling down and working harder, but this one is almost that there's just no quiet time. There's no reflection. There's no space to think, and therefore you don't have to answer that difficult question. You haven't got time to answer that difficult question. You can just push it to the back of your consciousness and keep moving forward with your manically busy schedule. And then the third strategy is the fantasy exit. People start imagining a different life, a different role, a different industry. I need to get out of this space. I need to go and do something different, completely different. And that gives them some form of relief because they can think, they can delude themselves in many cases. Yes, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to start something new. And I do help people do that. And I do see that. And I stepped out of the intensity of professional sport after 20 odd years and started the Lonely Leader business and created a whole different way of life and a way of working. But, and it's a big but, that fantasy exit isn't often what's needed. That's just an ability to try and numb some of the frustration and say, well, it'll be okay because I'm going to make a move. I'm going to go to this. But deep down, you know, you're not going to make the move for a variety of reasons. You know, geographic pressures, young family, financial dependency, etc., can all stop you making a move. So we need to step through this. We need to not just work ourselves harder, not just numb and distract ourselves with a never-ending list of meetings, and also not delude ourselves with fantasy exits and new roles and a whole fresh start if that is realistically not going to happen in the short term. So what do we do instead? Well, what we do instead is we reframe the question. What we were talking about at the start of the episode is it still worth it? I encourage clients, and obviously this is much easier when you're working in a one-to-one coaching capacity, but nonetheless, you can still open up your journal, you can still pick up your pen, and you can still answer some of these questions. And the key question is, what needs to change for this to be worth it again? What needs to change for this to be worth it again? Because no role is all bad. No role is beyond redemption. Often, things have changed, evolved in a way that don't serve us anymore, but we're sort of blinded to it because we just accept the status quo. So how do we unpack this? Well, it's questions like, what still energizes me? What part of my role do I truly enjoy? What drains me disproportionately, i.e., what part of my role do I really not enjoy? What am I doing out of habit that no longer serves me, that no longer adds value? What am I doing out of habit that no longer serves me, no longer adds value? What is my definition of success? What does success look like in this role? What do I need to do to feel truly fulfilled? Success might answer that question. What does success look like? For others, it's more about positioning around fulfillment. So there's a raft of questions that I would spend time asking clients on a one-to-one basis. And there's a whole range of them depending on the answers that come to the fore. But who's to say you can't start to recalibrate what you do? I appreciate you can't just say, let's not do any of the aspects of my job I don't enjoy. That would be too binary, too easy. However, there is a middle ground. Why can't you look to delegate some of those areas that you really don't like, or at least minimize your involvement? Yes, you need to keep an overview on it, but you are getting too dragged into areas that drain you. If there are particular people that are draining you, why? What are they doing? How can you address that? Is it because they're underperforming? What are you going to do about that underperformance? Does it need a candid conversation about how they operate and the misalignment between your expectations and their performance? Well, step into that so that you remove something that's disproportionately draining you. How can you do more of the stuff that you enjoy? Once you have clarity on what would give you greater fulfillment, what does success look like? Relay that back to where you are and what you're doing now and identify the gap. When you see the gap, we can then have the clarity of, well, if I want to get to that point, if I want to change my role in that way, then I need to do A, B, C. And just the very nature of starting to build a plan and taking action has an immediate cathartic impact on your mindset, because you are no longer drifting along on autopilot. You are now in control again of your destiny and shaping your role and your output in a way that is aligned with your definition of success and a greater level of fulfillment. So how do you know that you are on track? Well, obviously you can seek the help of a coach like myself or a mentor, and two heads is often better than one to navigate through this, and you'll realize that so many leaders are faced with this question, and excitingly, so many leaders take the necessary action so that this question fades into the rearview mirror. They're no longer asking, is this still worth it? Because they've got a renewed sense of energy and enjoyment and fulfillment from their role. But to know that you're on track, what tends to happen is you establish that clarity, you establish that roadmap. Then if you get into the more granular detail, there are less priorities that you're involved with. You start to really challenge yourself to say, where should I be deploying my time and energy? Not across every single task across the organization, but you get cleaner in your areas of priorities. You become more comfortable saying no to certain areas and to delegating certain areas. You become more focused on how you protect your energy so that you're not feeling that drained energy tank feeling that comes from just being pulled from pillar to post, having too many decisions to make, not addressing those things that are disempowering to your mindset and energy and getting dragged into areas that you don't really want to be there. So fundamentally what we're talking about is a higher sense of control, clarity about where you're trying to get to, and taking back the control so that you lead on your terms. You are still an invaluable leader for your people and your organization, but you are in control of how you deploy your energy and time. Whereas what often drives this question is it still worth it, is that you've lost control and that your door never stops revolving, that emails never stop pinging. People expect you to be involved in every project from the most senior to the most junior, and there's just no time to breathe. When you can step back, realign priorities, clean out that calendar a little bit, focus more on energy, say no to certain areas, and stay on track with the definition of the role and the pathway that gives you more success and fulfillment, everybody wins. You make the bigger decisions, you have more resilience, you have more energy, you inspire the people around you, and you feel fulfilled. And life is not a dress rehearsal. I use that analogy repeatedly, and I make no apology for the cheesy sentiment that might sit behind it, but we get one crack at this. We cannot afford a week, a month, never mind a year, drifting along, questioning, is this still worth it? Because nobody gets the best of you when you leave that question unanswered. You as an individual, it will gnaw away at you. The people around you are not being led in a manner that they deserve, in a manner they're probably used to from you previously, and the organization undoubtedly suffers if you're not optimizing your leadership potential. And I sincerely hope you feel the authenticity in what I'm talking about with you, because as I say repeatedly in the podcast back catalogue that you may have listened to, I have zero judgment, zero patronization when I'm developing this content, when I'm working with leaders individually or with leadership teams, because I've experienced this. I suppressed this very question for many years, and I was just punching myself forward, doubling down, to use my analogy earlier, working harder and harder and trying to almost run away from this question. But I lacked the maturity, and I lacked potentially the mentorship for someone to say, hang on a second, you can make some changes. You can raise your level of fulfillment. It doesn't have to be this punishing and this hard. So I hope I've sufficiently articulated the difference between people who've got some really serious physical or mental issues that are health related invariably, which lead you into burnout. This is that disillusionment. It's not quite that physically or mentally severe, but it's depriving you of fulfillment. And I hope the traps and the avoidance strategies will stop you in your tracks to think, I am actually probably doing that. And those questions prompt some reflection. So if I could leave you almost with a challenge, it would be, have that honest conversation with yourself, sitting quietly with your journal or with a loved one or a trusted colleague, and really think about, what is my leadership role costing me? What is it truly costing me? And start to make some changes. Define what success would be. What would fulfillment look like in a period of 6 months or 12 months from now? How big is that gap? What can you do? What can you take control of? What area, what aspect of your work, what individual relationship can you do so that you can reduce some of those perceived costs of your leadership role? It's not a dramatic reset. You will not do it all in one go. This is an evolution of your leadership style. You know, when you look at your career, wherever you are, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it doesn't matter. You are not the same person you were when you first started your professional journey. You are continually evolving in how you lead and how you operate. This is just one such iteration, but it's a very selfish iteration. It's about you and your fulfillment, but it's absolutely necessary. And if I leave you with one final message, you are not the first, you will not be the last. Do not feel guilty. Do not feel that you are somehow in completely the wrong job if you're having these questions. It's natural. It's because after a while, senior leadership will start to drain you. So don't beat yourself up and avoid the question. Step into it, answer it, re-energize yourself, and find that higher level of fulfillment. So I hope this has been a useful insight, and it goes without saying, as I say regularly, if you would like to explore working with me personally, if you feel you need some additional support to really unpack this issue and smooth out some of the complexity to get you back on track and to get you optimizing your role and equally your fulfillment in your role, then please do reach out. There's plenty of ways to make contact with me personally or us as an organization, and it would be my pleasure to have a little insight call over Zoom or Teams. Just explore it and see whether I can help you in more ways than simply listening to this episode today. I wish you the very best of luck on your journey of growth and development. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.